So continuing my series going over the lowest recoil builds for weapon in Arena Breakout Infinite, today we're going to be looking at the Fal. And this is one of my most used weapons, especially if you're doing runs on Armory. The Fal is an incredibly strong weapon. And even though I've been using the Fal a lot, this isn't a weapon, even when full built, that you're just going to be spraying at like medium ranges. It's still a 7.62x5.1 weapon, so it's going to have some big recoil, but because it's using that higher caliber, the bullets are just generally much better. And this weapon is still pretty controllable if you're tap firing at medium or longer ranges. And if you're in close ranges like on Armory, you can just spray this thing and you're going to delete anything you hit. So starting off, we have all the pieces to our stock, starting with the Fal tube adapter. Then we have the AR Premium extended tube, the red one. Then we have the Carbine Industry stock, and on that we have the Carbine stock recoil pad. Now this combination specifically with the Fal is more expensive than a lot of the other weapons, and this combination of stock pieces is already one of the most expensive parts. So if you still want to use a pretty good built Fal, just use one of these stocks. It'll massively reduce the price of this weapon. The best one being the Fal Triangle stock. The price shown here is currently like 29k, so it'll probably be like 35k or something like that. And the rest of these stock pieces together is probably over 100k. Depending on how much this adapter is, potentially quite a bit over 100k. So if you still want to use a pretty well-built Fal, just change out the stock. It'll massively reduce the price. But then for the top of the Fal, we have the Fal Sight Mount Receiver cover. And then for the handguard, we have the Fal Quad Rail Extended handguard. Then with the barrel, we're using the dedicated Fal Extended barrel. Now, if you're using this in closer ranges, specifically Armory, I would definitely switch out both the handguard and the barrel to get a much shorter barrel. That will increase your recoil, but if you're at closer ranges, the recoil doesn't matter as much, and you want a shorter weapon, especially on Armory. But then for our sight, you can use whatever sight you want. On Armory, I still just use the compact sight top rail and then the compact reflex sight. These are incredibly cheap compared to most sights, and it's very good on Armory. If you want to use sights for other maps, you're pretty much just going to choose off the price how expensive you actually want to go. Again, I like using stuff like the 3x sight if I'm going longer ranges, and then I still just use the compact sight bottom rail, and then we use the compact reflex sight on top. So we have a 3x, then we have the shorter range sight. That usually works pretty well in this game. And then going down to the pistol grip, we have the Fal Comfortable Rear Grip. You only have two options, the base one and this one, and that does increase your ergo, so that's pretty important because especially with the long version of this, only 40 ergo, not the greatest, but that's a sacrifice you make for the weapon having a somewhat controllable recoil. But then for the front grip, we're using the Light Grip Tactical Vertical Front Grip. And then for the muzzle adapter, we're using the AR-10 Muzzle Flash Suppressor. If you want to go silence, you're pretty much just going to be using the MK14 M14 suppressor. Now the suppressor is going to make your ergo and your recoil worse, but again, it's suppressed, and suppressors, especially at medium or longer ranges, are very strong in games like this. And then for the magazine, you can use whatever you want. You're pretty much only going to be using the 30 rounder or the 50 rounder. There's only a 2 ergo difference, and the 50 rounders for the Fal are usually pretty cheap, so I generally just recommend using the 50 rounder. You can still use a 30, it's generally going to be fine, but you're just going to have to play around having less ammo. Now the ammo for this weapon is in a bit of a weird position because you have one base ammo that you're never going to use, then you go up to BPZ, which does have level 3 pen, and since it's a higher caliber, it has 83 base ammo, which is pretty crazy. This round's only sitting at 136 right now, so this ammo is actually pretty cheap. So BPZ is actually a really cheap ammo for it being the purple rarity and having level 3 pen and that high of base damage. So that's actually a really good ammo to have. But if you're trying to go above that, you have a bit more options because you have a level 4 penning ammo, a level 5 penning ammo, and then a level 6 penning ammo at M61, which at 7,000 a round, I don't think you're ever going to use that. Maybe if you're just crazy late game and you have the money to spare, you use this on the highest tier of runs possible. But unless you're just crazy rich, you're primarily going to be using BPZ and then maybe M80. M62 I think is still way too expensive, again, unless you're just doing the craziest of expensive runs. And actually M80 at 1,000 a round isn't actually that crazy. It has base damage of 81, so still similar to BPZ, and it has a level 4 pen, pretty good penetration. And since you're fully auto, if you're saying something like Armory, even going up against people with level 5 or 6 armors, you're still going to be hitting them a bunch because you're fully auto, and these ammos do a lot of base damage, so So even at the highest tier, M80 should be good. But if you're really trying to go cheap, BPZ is still a pretty good round, and it's incredibly cheap. You can bring as much of this as you want and just spray it as much as you want, and it's not going to use up a ton of your money. But that's the entirety of the lowest recoil build for the Fal. Like I mentioned, this is one of my most used weapons. It's one of my most favorite weapons. Even though it's kind of wild to control, it's still a super fun weapon to use. You can't go wrong with this high of a caliber with a fully automatic rifle. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.